that are on the line here. Who's more likely to restore middle-class prosperity and give poor people an honorable way to work their way into it? Who's more likely to build a 21st century economy with the jobs of tomorrow that bring back the American dream? And who's more likely to do the thing that should matter in every election? The thing our founders pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to. Who is more likely in this terrible divisive time to form a more perfect union? That's the right answer. To the rhetoric of moderation. Governor Romney hasn't changed any of his specific positions. The commentators who were swooning over the fact that he wasn't foaming at the mouth and didn't look like he needed a rabies shot neglected to point that out to anybody, including each other. I mean, his argument against President Obama hadn't changed a lick. He said, look, we left him a terrible mess. He hasn't finished fixing it. So throw him out and put us back in. And he said, because this debt is such a horrible problem. You remember, they had a debt clock at their convention. It is the worst problem in the world. They only care about it when we're in. Let me remind you, this country never ran large, permanent, structural deficits in times of prosperity until 1981. The debt tripled under President Reagan. It went up 150% under the first President Bush. Then I gave you 4 balanced budgets and surpluses, my last 4 budgets. Then it doubled again under the second President Bush. Then we had a financial crash which collapsed tax revenues and required us to spend more on unemployment and food stamps and things like that to keep our neighbors' lives together. And all of a sudden, it's President Obama's fault. This debt is a terrible problem. So how do they propose to fill the deep debt hole? Well, first they want to dig it deeper. 20% across-the-board tax cut. And a corporate tax cut. And that's $5 trillion. Then they propose to dig it $2 trillion deeper by giving the Pentagon $2 trillion over the next decade to have masks for. Because as the President explained in that third debate, the Pentagon does something every government agency and every private business ought to do. Every 4 years, they ask themselves, what are the security needs of this country, and how do we build our budget from the ground up? And they didn't ask for this money, but Romney's going to give it to them whether they want it or not. And if we don't mess up what President Obama has already done, we're going to get 12 million jobs in the next 4 years. So his essential argument is the economy didn't get fully healed in 4 years. No expert on financial crashes believes that we could be fully healed in 4 years. None. It normally takes 10 years. Kenneth Rogoff and Carmen Reinhart wrote this wonderful book. This time it's different. And Rogoff, I think, is a moderate Republican. He won the Nobel Prize. And he sent me the book. I read it, and I read the chapters on America twice. And I called him and I said, Ken, is there any way in the wide world this thing could have been fixed in 4 years? He said, Lord, no. He said, most of these countries take 10 years or more. I said, can we beat that? He said, if you keep up the performance of the first 2 years, you can. When we had a Democratic Congress supporting the President, putting a floor on the We've got incredible capacity. We've got a great university system. We've got great venture capital. We've got a lot of innovators. Yeah, he says, maybe you could do it in 7 or 8 years. Nobody could have done it in 4 years. So essentially what Governor Romney's saying is, we're going to get 12 million jobs in the next 4 years. So elect me so I will get the credit for the things President Obama has already done. That is pure and simple.
Why, Romney?
Now, I like Obama's argument better. He took office right after we had the worst crash since the Great Depression. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month. He put a floor under it. We started the long road back. Since the job losses ended 32 months ago, now listen to this, we have had 5.3 million private sector jobs. That is more than twice as many as we had in the 7 years and 9 months of the Bush administration before the crash. They always complain that the president blames the crash on people that went before. I don't know how it could be his fault. He wasn't there. Loan reform that the Congress passed and that the president signed has the potential to reverse our disastrous slide in the graduation rates of young adults. We still rank near the top of the world in the percentage of our young people that go to college, but we have fallen to 16th in the percentage of our young adults with four-year degrees.
That ain't
and
right.
we all know why. Because the cost has gone up twice the rate of inflation. And because young people are living in families that are strapped economically, and they're scared to borrow more money, and they're scared they can't repay it. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So, here's what President Obama has done. With the Congress, they passed a law which said, we're going to scrap this old student loan system. It's cumbersome and expensive. We pay fees to the banks, and we guarantee 90% of the loans they make. So this time we'll just set aside a loan reserve, let the education department loan the money direct to students that the University of Minnesota Duluth said are qualified for student loans. Now here's the deal. The loans will be cheaper. When I did this on an experimental basis when I was president, the average student saved $1,300 in repayment costs for every $10,000 they borrowed. You will be able to repay that loan as a small, fixed percent of your income for up to 20 years. Nobody ever has to drop out of college again because they're afraid they can't take on more debt and they won't be able to repay it. What you have to repay will be determined by your salary. And when you get out, suppose you want to go into a small town with a low tax base and not very high salaries and be a teacher for 5 years. You can afford to do it now because your loan obligation will be determined by your salary. Suppose you graduate from medical school with an average debt of more than $200,000, which is the average in America today, and you want to go into an inner city clinic, or you want to go practice on a Native American reservation, and you're not going to make much money. You can afford to do that for a few years because your loan obligation will be determined by your salary, not the other way around. This is